Thank you all for coming today. We're going to get started, and I want to talk to you about organizing your online classroom. Thank those of you who are with us and those of you who are watching from a distance. So we have our distance learners with us as well, I hope. I'm Tina Cruz. I'm one of the Associate Directors at the Center for Teaching Excellence. Just to give you a little bit of background on me, I've been teaching online probably 12-ish years now, over 10 years. The largest online class I've had was 415. My current online class has 220. So I have learned how to organize a few things along the way. Most of what I will tell you today comes from my experience. I also get a lot of helpful tips from others like yourself. I know many of you here with us today, and we share a lot of our tips together. If you have questions, please do ask as we go along, and I'll repeat the question for those who are online, and we'll just jump in and get started. There are lots of things to organize when you teach an online class, as you know. Has everyone in here taught an online class? Is everyone in here getting ready to teach an online class? Some are getting ready to, and some have taught online, which is a good thing. So if you saw someone sitting next to you who said, I teach online, sit next to them and ask them all their tips. And I call it admire and acquire. You admire what they're doing, and then you acquire that and make it your own. You might have to tweak it. The model that's up on the PowerPoint basically is just the way that I look at online learning, and there's three main things in an online classroom: the instructor, the students, and the content. All of those things have to be organized. Okay? What's the hardest thing to organize between the instructor, the student, and the content? Instructor. Could be the instructor, it could be the students. Okay? You can't really organize your students, but the way you organize your course can help them be more organized. More organized in the way they communicate with you, more organized in the way that they submit assignments or whatever it is that it might be. But there's always a continuous interaction online, whether it's synchronous or whether it's asynchronous. There's always interaction, whether you're there or not, or whether your students are there or not. Something's going on all the time. So it's important that you organize it the best that you can. And you'll learn a lot of tips from your students. A lot of times the students say, why do you have this in that location? I would never look there for that. Why did you do that? Well, in my mind, it made perfect sense, you know. So sometimes you have to explain why you put things there, or change it. Go, okay, fine. I'll put it where you think it should be. But now I need to let everyone else know I moved it. So the environment in an online classroom is very dynamic. It can be ever-changing. I do change things throughout the semester sometimes. I know people look at the syllabus as a contract, but it is a tentative course outline, and if something is working very well, I might do more of that. If something's not working very well, then I might take that out of the process. Online education, the way I look at it, whether pure means it's totally online, you never see your students, or blended, you might teach some in the classroom and you might teach some online. It's the use of technology, whether hardware or software, to provide assistance to the learners to enable them to achieve basically the learning objectives or outcomes. Okay? That's my definition in my head that helps me figure out what I'm doing. You're there, your content is there, and the instructors are there to learn. I mean, the students are there to learn. So whatever you do should assist the students in learning, whether it's the organization, whether it's your syllabus, whether it's the project, whatever it is, it should be to assist them in the learning process. What needs to be organized? I wanted to just put the word everything up here, but I had to condense this to a 50-minute or 60-minute lecture. So these are some of the main things that I think should be organized, and I'll try to describe those to you as we go along. Modules, you know what I mean when I say module? Okay, what's another word that you think is the same as module? What's a synonym for module?
Units.
Units, lessons, whatever you want, chunks, okay? Modules are chunks. They're units, whatever it is. They have to be organized. They should be organized all in the same way. So if they go to Module 1, it's organized the same as Module 2. They go to Module 3, it's organized the same way. I hate to say that you train students, because I know you train animals, but you do have to and somewhat train them so that they know where to go look, they know how things are supposed to be, and they know what's expected. Your assessments also have to be organized. You're going to have a different and variety of assessments. There's going to be lots of different assessments that you can do. Your communication is probably the most important thing. If you want bad teaching evaluations, do not communicate with your students, and you will get bad teaching evaluations. That is the quickest way for your teaching evaluations to just go down drastically, is if your communication's not there. Now again, with your communication, you kind of have to train the students. What they think is immediate feedback and what you think is immediate feedback may be two different things. So for me, what works is I describe immediate feedback as within 24 hours. Okay? That just works for me. But you have to organize your communication, whether you use email, discussion boards, Facebook, whatever it is you want to use. And your syllabus. Your syllabus is a form of communication, but you really have to have a very detailed, organized syllabus. My syllabi for online courses are probably twice as long as the ones in a traditional face-to-face class, because you have to tell them everything. Okay? So these things need to be organized. It doesn't necessarily mean this is the order that you organize things. I just wanted to try to make a word out of the letters, so I did that. Okay? So these are the Macs. All right? I'm trying to make the Mac people happy. Maybe. I don't know. When I go to organize myself, again, this is just from my experience, I'm a front loader. That means I put everything for the entire course out there 1 week before the course starts. Every quiz, every assignment, every reading, every anything. And that's just my preference. Some people don't like to front load because the students can work at their own pace, and then you get, especially if you have 220 students, you've got 200 students on Unit 1, and then you've got 10 on Unit 5, and 4 on Unit 8, and so they really kind of get spread out. I like to front load so that every week I don't have to remember, because my brain doesn't work as good as it used to, that I have to put something else out there. Some people like to open up the module at the beginning of the week, and then the students work on it, and it closes at the end of the week. Whatever works for you. Okay? And you'll once you get into teaching, the more you teach online, the more you just see what works for you. If you need a schedule that every Monday at 8 o'clock you open something up, and every Friday at 5 o'clock you close something down, then by all means do that. But I'm a front loader. When you start to do your modules, do one module and do the easiest one, whatever it might be. Do the easiest one, and then test it and retest it and test it and retest it. Even if you can get a colleague or someone else, a student, your graduate assistant, whoever it might be, to go in and look through that module and make sure they understand what you're asking them to do, that all the components are there. If you do set up cutoff dates, that those are there, or whatever. Do one module, then test, retest, test, retest, test, retest. Get it perfect. Then you can duplicate those efforts to however many modules you need. Okay? Some, again, like modules based on content. Some like to do them weekly or monthly or whatever works for you. But they should be consistent. Okay? This is just an example of my class right now. And you can see down the left-hand side, those are the buttons, obviously. And I have always, I don't know why, I think somebody showed me one time, and I must have thought they were right. I set up all mine by content. I've seen a lot of very good courses set up by week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. If I ever teach this class again with 220 undergrad non-technology majors learning Excel and Access, I think I'm going to go week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5. Okay? But I ask for that feedback in my course evaluation. So if there's anything you think you might want to change in the organization of your course, add it to your end of course evaluation and praise them for giving you content or feedback, and say, I want to teach this better the next time I teach it. And you'll be surprised how many of them are interested in telling you what to do. What to do, yeah. So I break mine down. They go to course documents, is where they have all the course documents, if they have a reading, a syllabus, whatever. Communication is where we email back and forth, or they can email each other. We always have a discussion board. And I'll show you in a minute, but I tell my students, for organizational purposes, do not email me. I tell all my online students, people don't believe me, but I do. I put it in my syllabus. Do not email me, okay? Because you know how many, I've got like 3 jobs. You know how many emails I get in my normal email? I don't need another 220 every day going, I couldn't figure out step number 6. And then the next one says, never mind, I figured it out. And then the next one says, thanks for taking all my emails. And then the next one says, sorry, I didn't mean to email you that last email. And you're like, oh my God, delete, 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 delete. So I always use a frequently asked question discussion board. And they're instructed and trained to always post their questions there first. Okay? If they have a personal question, obviously, they can email me. But that works out very well. There's online lectures they have to watch, so they know where to click on online lectures. There's quizzes they have to take. SAM is a training package that we use, so they know they have to go there for the SAM training. And then if they give any extra credit, they like that button a lot, okay? But it's just nice to put, so I organize by content. That has worked for me. But I think a lot of times it depends on the course. It depends on the content, and it depends on the students and the instructor. Because like I said, if I ever teach this again, I think I'm going to go back to weekly. Because every week in this particular class, actually 5 things are due. I forgot something. They have to watch the online lecture. They have to do the training. They have to do a tutorial where they submit it on Blackboard assignments. They have to take a quiz, and then they have to do a case problem. So that was the 5th thing I forgot. So if they would just go in and do week 1, these are the 5 things I have to do. Week 2, these are the 5 things I have to do. I think it would have solved a lot of the problems I had up front with students going, I still don't understand what I need to do. And I kept, putting read page 16 again in the syllabus. It's right there. It says these 5 things have to be turned in every week. But I think that would have helped alleviate some of those questions. So again, you'll get organizing things the way that makes sense to you. As far as your assessments go, a variety of assessments are good, so you tap in on all the different learning styles, obviously. I always do some type of diagnostic assessment up front. Since this class is Excel and Access, I just do a quick little self-survey. I give them 5 participation points for doing it, and they rate themselves on how much they know, what level of proficiency they're at with Excel and Access. Does it change what I'm grading? Really not. Does it change what's on Blackboard? No, not really. But it gives me an idea of probably how many questions I'm going to get about Excel and how many questions I'm going to get about Access. And then I make sure, I've been through all the same projects that they have to go through, so I know particularly what questions they're going to have. And then sometimes I'll be a little bit proactive. I know they're going to have problems with the payment function in Excel. They always do. So I'll do a little mini tutorial about the payment function. And then when I get 220 postings on the frequently asked question, I don't know how to do the payment function, I say go watch the tutorial. Okay? So that helps. There are also diagnostic assessments out there that students can take that kind of tell them whether or not they're suited as a good learner in an online environment, which is kind of nice for them to take, because it asks them if they have good time management skills, if they're procrastinators, if they like to work alone, if they like to work in groups. It asks all those types of questions. And I've got one, and I should have put the link in here. So if anybody wants that link, just email me. But it's a pretty good one. Once they complete it, it comes up with like a stoplight, red light, green light, yellow light. And the red light says, you're going to have some big old problems in this area if you don't get your head together. The yellow one says, caution, you might have some problems. And then the green light's like, man, you are a good time manager, or you're really good at this. This will be easy for you in the online environment. Okay? So those are kind of nice. Formative assessments, kind of as you're going along, you want to make sure the students are learning the content. Those have to be organized as well, so they kind of know they're just for, I don't really give them points for this, but I just want to know what they know. You know, I don't know what you don't understand if you don't tell me what you don't understand, kind of thing. So I do sometimes a discussion board that's just called a 1-minute paper, and I put out an announcement and I say, I want you to take 1 minute, type as fast as you can, and tell me about some concept that you do not understand up to this point. We've covered 4 tutorials or whatever. Exit slips, kind of the same thing. If you see a lot of students are having problems with Module 2, for instance, you might say, I'm going to do an exit slip. I want everybody to tell me what they do know, and if you know enough, you can exit out of Module 2 and get into Module 3. So you don't have people progressing ahead too quickly that don't understand what they're doing. A lot of the cases in Excel and Access build on each other. So whatever you do in case 1, if you got that wrong, it's going to be wrong again in case 2. And then if it's still wrong, it's going to be wrong again in case 3. So if you don't catch them early enough, they really get confused. So there should be some type of formative assessment that you have kind of organized in or planned in. And of course your end of unit summative assessment, however you do it. Electronic quizzes so that they will be graded automatically. Projects, whatever the summative assessment might be. Organize your communication, again, is probably one of the most important things. With this class, I thought, what the heck, I've got 220 kids, I'll just communicate out the wazoo with them. So I'm doing Facebook, and I'm doing Twitter, and I'm doing a discussion board on Blackboard, and all I did was just create a whole bunch more work for me, you know. But I'm really interested in the Facebook discussion. I made a group just for the class. They had to, you know, get permission from me to come in, so I know it's just my students. And out of 220, I think about 110, about half of them, joined the discussion or joined the Facebook group. I don't know if all of them have participated yet or not. I haven't looked at that. And I've got about the same number who have responded on the discussion board in Blackboard. So I'm real interested. It will be interesting to see when this course is over and like I have a free week to go back and look at the data to compare. Were those the same students? Were they different students? You know, how many of them really did help others and that kind of thing. Twitter was kind of a bust. I had about, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30. They're following me on Twitter. It makes me a little nervous that my students are following me. But one thing I did with Twitter that, again, didn't work at all, and I thought it would, anytime I went to lunch, I would just Twitter, I'm at Moe's eating lunch. I'm going to be there an hour. If you have any questions, come sit. I'm not buying your lunch, but, you know, and I envisioned 220 students standing outside Moe's, you know. I didn't get one. But anyway, it was worth a shot. But try to communicate in whatever way that works for you and hopefully that works for your students. Virtual classrooms, I haven't with this particular class because it is so large, but a lot of times I use Adobe Connect Professional, the old Breeze, and have face-to-face synchronous online classrooms, which I call virtual classrooms, which you can record and that kind of thing. I've also held online office hours through that. So while I'm in my office, I have an open Adobe Connect Professional meeting, and if anybody pops in, then I can answer their question either verbally or in the chat room, and then so they don't have to bounce into my office physically. But with this 220 students, I have seen more students face-to-face in my office this semester than any other semester while I've been on this campus. So it's kind of interesting to me.
Why do you think that?
I think, one, the content maybe is difficult for them. There's a couple different software packages that they have to use that they're not familiar with. And when, I don't know, maybe it's me, maybe I can't explain it well in an email or on the discussion board, but it's almost like they just need affirmation or, you know, you're doing okay, you're doing all right, you know. A lot of them just come in to say, I got a 0 on that, I don't know why. And I'm like, well, if you click on the 0 and you look in that comment box right next to it where I put why it was wrong, it's right there. And they go, oh, I didn't know that. So some things are really simple things that I could have done. And I just think they like to see a human being every once in a while. I just think they think that's cool. On the discussion board responses, I try to give them information so that they can organize their responses and understand how I'm going to grade them on their discussion. So this is something that goes in my syllabus. You can word it however you want. But if you just tell students that they have to respond to 5, discussion board postings to get the credit or whatever for communication or participation, they put in things like, yay, Billy, that was a good answer. Way to go, Joe. I agree with Frank. Frank's the smartest. Frank rules, So I tell them that those are not acceptable, that will not get them credit. And so then I give them a hint that it has to add to the conversation, whatever it is we are talking about. So again, it's just good we can't organize our students, but maybe we can help them organize their thoughts, or at least understand that they have to be more organized in the way that they respond to the questions. All right. Also, language is something you want to talk about with your online students. They fall very quickly into the text messaging language. I'm still trying to figure out what some of the messages have been that I'm trying to read. I'm like, I hope this is good. I'm just putting vowels in. May I buy a vowel, please, Vanna? Because they just get into a totally different language sometimes. So I tell them, if it's appropriate and you can use text language, then I tell them they can. The most of the time when I tell them they can use text language, it's when the students are talking to each other, because I don't care what language they use when they talk to each other online. When they're talking to me or we're discussing something professional in the class or something like that, then I want like capital letters, punctuation, complete sentences, a verb and a noun would be good, those kinds of things. So it's just good to let them know. Again, it's a part of your communication. Let them know what may be used. And these are just examples. If they're in a wiki, you may say, go ahead, use your text messaging. But if you're on the discussion board, then you have to use whatever. Or you can just say no text messaging language, whatever it is that makes you happy. Right? The C I've been using for communication, but really it could be that it's a centralized location. Recently, there was a mutual expectations group discussion from the Office of Student Engagement, Jimmy Gahagan. There was a mutual expectations roundtable, if you will, with students and faculty. And the question was, students, what do you expect technology-wise out of faculty? Faculty, what do you expect technology-wise from students? So I said, I expect students to check their email. Crazy me, And then other students would say, why do you make us use all these crazy technologies? One girl said, I had to learn Google Docs, and I had to learn, some other software that did this chat thing, and then I had to do Adobe Connect Professional, and then I have to do Blackboard. Why do you make us do all these things? And I said, because everybody tells us that you're the technology generation. You're the natives, okay? And they said, we don't know how to use all that stuff. And so one of them said, why don't they have, training for students, like at the eye care center or wherever? I don't know where would be the best place. Why don't you have a student training technology day or something? I go, well, that's a good idea. Maybe we should. Then I said, but don't leave the faculty out, because we need one of those too, So it's just interesting that the students feel like they're having to go so many different places to get the software or whatever technology the faculty are asking them to do. So anything you can put in a central location helps you organize everything better. If it's Blackboard, great. If it's your own website, great. But if you make them go to Adobe Connect Professional, put that link in there. If you make them go to that SAM is that training package we use for Excel and Access. But I don't tell them to go to sam2000.course.com. I just put the link in Blackboard that says, go here for SAM training. Click. Okay? So anytime you can get it all in one central location, one is better for you because you're not running around to 42 different places, and it's better for them. Okay? So again, it's trying to help them become more organized as well. A lot of times you're teaching a traditional class, and then all of a sudden somebody pops up and says, guess what? You're going to teach that traditional class now online. And that's the first kind of phase in thinking about, how do I do that? How do I organize that? Where do I put stuff? And these are the kind of questions that I typically ask. In my traditional class, when I taught this class, Excel and Access, we met 2 times per week. I'd lecture. We'd have tests and quizzes. They did some teamwork. They did oral presentations. Sometimes you have disability issues that arise, so you dealt with those. However, they worked in the computer lab. So that's where I started. And then I go, so how do I put all that online? How does that work? So I start to ask myself, do I really have to meet with them twice a week? Probably not. Do I really want to lecture? I don't want to, but I need to. So I can put those online easily. Okay? How much do I need to lecture? They're not going to listen to more than 15 or 20 minutes at a time, and that's pushing the max. So if you have an hour lecture, it should be lecture part 1, lecture part 2, lecture part 3. This is so important. You can listen 3 times about this information. All right? How do I give tests? You always want to make sure that they're, the questions are randomly selected. So if 10 of them go to the computer lab at the same time and sit down next to each other, which I've seen a lot of students doing that. I have the same screen up, but all the questions are different. Oh, imagine that. Teacher's smarter than you think. Should I give more projects? If you do give more projects, do you let them work individually or do they work in groups? That kind of thing. So you just kind of have to ask yourself questions. Okay? I was doing oral presentations, but I'm not going to do oral presentations with 220 students. Okay? So they're still going to create a report that they have to. They're still going to create the PowerPoint that they have to. And I gave them extra credit if they can figure out how to do voice over PowerPoint, which a lot of them can. If they don't, that's fine. I still got a PowerPoint. Tell them exactly what goes on the PowerPoint. Slide 1, heading. Slide 2, heading. No more than 6 lines per slide. No more than 6 words per line. That's my 6x6 rule. It's just what I do. But you learn again how to help them organize their information in the way you want it to make it easier for you to grade. Okay? That's a key. So I do a quick storyboard to help me, again, kind of get acclimated to what the heck's going on. S to S is student to student. S to I is student to instructor. I to S is instructor to student. So I take my traditional class and I grid it. Okay? My lectures, obviously, is instructor to student. Okay? I make them do student presentations, so that's student to student, and it's student to instructor. Okay? The reason I do this is because if you end up, let's say you did this, and every X was in this column and there was nothing else, you're like, oh dear Lord, I'm doing too much work. That's instructor to student. That means I'm doing everything. Okay? So how do I figure this out to do it a little bit different so I can get all of this interaction? And this may not be perfect, It's just the way it laid out. So if this needs to move over here or this needs to move over here or whatever, that's the dynamic of the course. And you want to just make sure you have X's everywhere and you're not doing all the work. Okay? You're the facilitator of this learning. You're not the knowledge dumper, if you will. All right? So that's just a quick little storyboard I do. And that really does help you kind of get organized a little bit. The syllabus, again, I can't say enough about it. It has to be very organized. The students have to be able to figure out, what's in there, when are things due. They really like one page. You can put it at the beginning or put it at the end, but one page that has all the due dates on it. Okay, project 1's due here, project 2 due here. So they don't have to go through 25 pages trying to figure out when's project 1 due. Just put it all at the end is what I do. Okay? You'll also have to figure out for yourself when you organize your time with all your other jobs that you have, what's the best time for them to turn in assignments. okay, for me is Wednesday at 5 o'clock. That works for me because I have office hours on Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday, day before things are due, they're going to have a lot of questions. 5 o'clock, because if you say midnight, you better be up at 11:59 when they freak out on you because something won't submit, okay? If you are up at midnight, cool, do it, you know. If you want it to be 2 a.m. because you're one of those night birds or early birds or late birds or I don't know, I'm not sure what that would be, late and early. Do whatever works for you. And then Thursday, I have office hours, so I grade, okay? When I first did it, I was going to be really, really nice. I said Sunday at midnight. You can have all weekend. So all weekend, I answered questions. And then all day Monday, I graded papers, you know. Maybe I made it Saturday at midnight. I don't know. I've graded all weekends. I've been up at midnight. I'm like, what is wrong with me? Right? Seems like that was way common sense. But when you get started teaching online, sometimes common sense just is not common. It just flies out the window. This time in the syllabus, I put the headings in my syllabus as questions. What are the course objectives? Question mark. Here they are. What is SAM? Because I knew that would be a new software for them. What is Excel? What is Access? Anything I didn't think they would need to know. And then I also put in a question. Would it be all right to procrastinate in this course? Question mark. No, it would not. But thanks for asking. So that may have been a little bit of humor involved in that. This is the part where I say do not, I put this in my syllabus, do not email Dr. Cruz with questions pertaining to course content. Okay? Frequently asked question discussion board. If you have questions, post them there. Bonus points may be earned if you answer someone else's question completely and correctly. I judge complete and correct, okay? You quickly learn who are your online students who, if they were sitting in front of you in a classroom, has their hand up every time you ask a question. Who knows how to? Billy? How did you know I was going to say that? But these kids are online too, and they start answering everybody else's questions. Okay? You look at those very carefully the first few weeks or whatever, and then pretty soon, if Billy answered it, you know it's right. Just keep going. If it's not right, the other kid will figure it out and go, Billy was wrong, and I'm going, Billy, what are you doing? How come you're wrong? I thought you were right. But it is very, very helpful, very much a time saver for you to get them involved in interacting with each other and answering each other's questions. I also tell them that I do not check email consistently on Saturday and Sunday. I also tell them that I check Blackboard during office hours and other times when available. Of course, you know I'm checking it all the time, but they don't have to know that. I also tell them that if they post a question between Sunday and Thursday, it will be answered within 24 hours. So if they post it on Sunday, I can answer it on Monday. If they post it on Thursday, I can answer it on Friday. But if they post it on Friday, it might not get answered till Monday. Okay? Just to try to give some life back into your life. Take your life over. When I first started teaching online, I was a 24/7 instructor. Is exactly what I was. I wasn't a facilitator. I really wasn't a teacher. I was just a 24/7 zombie is what I was. And my teaching evaluations prove that. They've gotten better. If they obviously have, you know, a personal question, whatever, they can email me. I do let them. I'm not as mean as it seems. So if you think back to that storyboard where we had the X's, once you figure out what you're doing, then you go, how do I organize it? How do I get that done? Always try to do the lowest common denominator. Just because a software package has 5,000 components to it doesn't mean you have to use all of them to confuse the students and confuse yourself. Okay? If you just need a chat room, you don't have to use Adobe Connect Professional. There's one in Blackboard. If you, or use the wiki for one. Do whatever. Just because a blog is supposed to be an online journal tool, and you don't want them to journal, use it for something else. It's there. You don't have to use everything that's available to you. So lowest common denominator to keep yourself sane, less to organize, and keep the students from going, why do you make us go to all these other crazy places? And again, if they're doing oral presentations, do you really need to see them? If you want to, then you have to tell them that they need to buy a webcam. If you don't have to see them, you just want to hear their voice and make sure that they know the content, then it's one less thing you have to watch. It's one less thing you have to support if something goes wrong with the camera. So it, again, will save you time. When they do teamwork, this is an organization technique that I've used for years. I typically divide the groups into 4 or 5. I try to get 4, but because I like these terms. But I appoint somebody, or they can do it themselves. Somebody's the leader, somebody's the facilitator, somebody's the recorder, and somebody's the reporter. Okay? The leader is the one that says, okay, you guys, we got to get together. We're going to get together at the library. We're going to get together at Wild Hair. We're going to get together, online. Where are we getting together? Okay? And how do you want to do this? Do you want, Billy, do you want to do one part of the project, and Sue, you do one part, or are we all going to meet and we're all going to do it together? The leader helps figure out how we're going to do this. Okay? If it's all online, the facilitator becomes even more important, because the facilitator makes sure that everybody participates. If Billy's not participating, it's the facilitator's job to keep emailing him, calling him, showing up at his job, being like a bill collector or something. I don't know. Just get on him and go, why aren't you doing anything? You have to participate. I have allowed groups to fire people out of their group before, but they have to write me a letter and tell me why they're firing them and how they tried to resolve the issue before they just kicked them out. But the facilitator makes sure everybody's participating. Then the recorder, anytime they meet, or whatever it is they're doing, if it's online, the recorder's job's pretty easy, but they may have to organize the information. What did we do? What's our next step? Almost like the secretary, okay? And then the reporter is the person, if we do have some type of online presentation, or they have to post information about their group project, that's the reporter's job. So everybody has to do something. They're all going to have to work with the reporter eventually, because he or she has to make sure everything's right. So again, it just kind of helps organize the group and gets them. Because if you just go, you 4 in a group, they go, okay, Billy does all the work. The other 3 just, I don't know, do whatever they want. So, and they've all had that happen to them, and it's all frustrating for them, and they don't want to work in a group because they've had to do all the work themselves at some point. Yes, ma'am.
So as part of that assignment, are they submitting like the notes from their meetings and that kind of thing?
A lot of times I'll say, like, after meeting 2, maybe you have to meet 5 times or whatever. After meeting 2, just do a bulleted list of the things that you have done and what 3 things you have left to do. Yeah, something to make them accountable as well. For those of you online, I don't know if you heard that, she asked if the recorder has to post anything at any point in time. Yes?
I've done it where I've broken people up into groups of 5 and have 5 readings, and they each have to take a turn reporting. Is it good to stay in the same group, or do you think it's better to mix the teams up?
Okay, the question was, is it better to keep the groups the same as they go on and work on different group projects, or mix them up? I typically leave that up to the students in really, really large classes, because I know their time constraints. And I'll say pick a group, and then if they have another group project, if you didn't like somebody you picked, and it's usually their friend who's a slacker, social loafer is what I call them, then I have them pick other teams if they want to. So I let them mix and match. I know a lot of people who assign, and by golly, that's it, and you're going to stay in the same group through the whole 15 weeks. So I think it matters sometimes just with the dynamics of the students. But it's kind of like if you get in a bad group, dang, that's a long 15 weeks, But if you get in a good group, then they're not going to move around anyway. They're going to keep them.
I notice is the group either likes them and covers their butt, or they don't, and then they want to fire them.
Right. And I'll show you too, I think I have it in this PowerPoint. I do a peer evaluation. So the students evaluate each other and they evaluate themselves, and that evaluation goes toward their grade. So even if you're working on a group project, every individual gets a grade, which could be different depending on their peer evaluation. I'm the only one that sees the peer evaluation. They don't see it, so they can be very honest. And if, you know, sometimes you just know people have a personality conflict and they just really, really didn't like that person, but you've talked to them and they've turned work in, you know they've done something, you're the only one that saw the peer evaluation. So you do with what you want. All right. Rubrics, I'm a rubric crazy person. You've got to have them to stay organized, focused, and consistent with your grading. Okay? And again, I'm the front loader, so every rubric is out there before they even start the class. So anytime they start a project, first thing I tell them, go look at the rubric. You know what's expected of you. You know how I'm going to grade you. There are no surprises, so you need one. And put the objectives in there, of course. Anytime there's objectives in the rubric, the students go, oh, that's why we did that. Huh. Wondered why we did that reading. I wondered why we did that group project. Because the objectives of the course say it's under the heading. What are the objectives of the course? Well, they're right there in the rubric too. Here's just an example of, it's not a complete one, but I have one class I teach, they do an electronic portfolio. But this is just an example to show you that you can make the words at the top whatever you want. I did acceptable, needs improvement, and not acceptable. You might have mastery level or proficient to what the heck are you thinking? I don't know. You know, you can have different words up there, or you don't have to have words at all. You could just have points. You know, like 3 points, 5 points, 1 point. But all the points don't necessarily have to be the same. You see, my first row is 5, 2, 0, and the second row is 3, 1, 0. So depending on, you know, how important it is, it's going to get more points. Some people will argue with you all day long that you shouldn't give zeros because it hurts the self-esteem of the students. But I feel like they have high self-esteem, so I do give zeros. That's just, again, personal opinion. Here's one for a discussion board. A lot of times, you know, when you tell students you can't just put, you're right, or way to go, Billy, they'll go, well, what should I put on a discussion board? Well, this kind of tells them. You know, you consistently respond, or you post topics that don't even relate to the discussion. So this gives you a little kind of guide for them. This one, some people say, is too lengthy. Every time they do a discussion board, I'm not doing this big old rubric. I go, here you go. Here's one-liner. You can do it. Okay? Posting fully addresses the discussion board and stimulates a follow-up. 2, you didn't respond. Okay? But again, it just kind of helps them understand where you're coming from. This is the peer evaluation that I was talking about. And the way it works is, yeah, again, you get to rate yourself. This is you. You get to rate all your members. If there were, you know, let's say there were 5 people in the group, and 5 people turn it in, and this is you, and you rate yourself 100, and everybody else rates yourself 100, then that's an average of 100, because I could do that in my head. 500 divided by 5 is 100. I'm not going to give you any other examples. But then they get 100% of whatever the group project grade is. Okay? If somebody rated you, and I'm just going to make this up, and it's going to be wrong, but I'm just saying. Let's say somebody rated you 90, 90, 90, 80, and you rated yourself 100. You add all those up and divide by 5, and it comes to 92.8. Comes to 93. They get 93% of whatever the group grade is. That's their individual grade. Okay? I've been doing that since I was at Ball State in ~96, and I've had one student that took me to like faculty court over his grade because he got a 50, and that was generous of his group. So it was a big project, so it took his grade from an A to a C in the final grade. And then we went to faculty court, and I stood up and showed all the paperwork, and he had rated himself a 50. So faculty court went, you get a C in the class. He goes, well, I really didn't do that much work. I went, well, okay. All right. Glad we went to court. But anyway, it's a good way to hold them responsible for what they're doing, and to get those social loafers who aren't pulling their weight, and it encourages them to pull their weight. Here's a few resources I just have. If you, I have 2 handouts. If you have never been to the EDUCAUSE website, that would be a good idea. Thank you. They have these things called 7 Things You Should Know About, and it's about everything. If you've, are thinking about using Second Life, they've got a handout that's called 7 Things About Second Life. They've got the one, I don't remember which ones I gave you now, 7 things about virtual meetings and 7 things about lecture capture. Okay, so if you're thinking about either one of those, these are just quick little tidbit sheets about them, and EDUCAUSE has a lot of resources that you can just grasp, download, it prints, pulls up PDF, and you're good to go. Of course, the CTE website, if you're not on our listserv, please get on the listserv. forteachers.org has a lot of resources, different things you can do with your online classes, quizzes, games, flashcards, those types of things. Sloane C. There is a Sloane Conference, Sloane C Conference in early November every year in Orlando. And it's one of the best conferences that I have been to in a long time. Vera P. goes to one that is a branch off of this, and it's in August in Minnesota or Wisconsin, one or the other. And she said it is very, very good as well. The one in Orlando has a lot of instructional designers that go to that, and you learn a lot from them about how to, design your course. There are a lot of universities, believe it or not, that have more than one instructional designer. Raise your hand, Renee Schaefer. All right. Like when I was talking to some guys at Penn State, we were out to eat dinner, and we were talking around the table, and he said, well, how long have you been an instructional designer? Because I said, well, I do this in my class, and I do this, and I do this. I said, I'm not an instructional designer, I'm faculty. They go, what? Our faculty would never do that. We design the course, and then we hand it to the faculty, and they teach it. I go, wow, what a novel idea. So then I start walking around the conference going, faculty or instructional designer, faculty or instructional designer. And but it's really cool to talk to a lot of them, to kind of get, I learned a lot from them, how to do some things. So that's good. TTS is Chris Brown's and Mitchell West's website. I did a study with the guy at Penn State on workload management strategies for online educators, and that is the link to the results of our study, and it gives you some helpful hints on authoring your course, teaching your course. There's 4 parts: authoring, teaching, course revision, and institutional support. Some workload management strategies that hopefully will help you. And this PowerPoint will be uploaded on the CTE website, or if you just want to email me and ask me to email it to you, I'm happy to do that. You have evaluations in front of you, or in a minute you do, those of you who are here. If you're online, watching online, there's a course evaluation for you to fill out. But my email is tcrews, C-R-E-W-S. You'd be surprised how many different ways there is to spell cruise. And at mailbox, so tcrews at mailbox. And one other thing that's coming up that I wanted to make you all aware of is we have a grant program that's going on this summer through the Center for Teaching Excellence. It'll be summer and fall. And I believe, the grant is $3,600. And what we're trying to do is assist, learn from, figure out how to do it better. People seem to be teaching larger and larger and larger and larger courses, whether it's online or in a traditional classroom. And we want to try to help those faculty And you can find this information on the CTE website. The CTE website is www.sc.edu/CTE. There's an application. We brought some information about that too. But if any of you are interested, we'll probably meet like 5 or 6 times in the summer and the fall and kind of help you, hash out how do I do it, or how do I want to do it, or learn from each other some tips and tricks for teaching larger and larger classes. And then you will actually teach that class in the fall, and then we'll gather some data from the students and you to see what worked and what didn't work. And then in the spring at some point, those who get the grants will then do some type of presentation or something to tell us what they've learned. Okay? So it's just a good opportunity for you to get a little extra money and learn from each other and go from there. All right? We have 9 minutes. Does anyone have questions or comments, or you want to throw out something that you do that works for you? Mm-hmm.
You mentioned blended courses on ground and online. Have you ever taught anything like that?
Yes, that's kind of how I started. Originally, I was always teaching traditional classes and just kind of said, I was teaching those who want to be teachers. So they taught all day long, and then some of them would drive, an hour or 2 hours to campus, that kind of thing. It was when I was at West Georgia University, so they'd drive in from Atlanta. And they're the ones that brought it up. They're like, why do we have to come here, And so that's how I started. And it worked really well for that audience because, one, those who are going to be teachers need human contact. I need to see how they teach and, present themselves and whether or not they know the content. But a lot of like the lesson plans or some of the lectures I recorded, or they'd work virtually on their projects or things like that. So it actually worked very well in a blended environment. I kind of like the blended environment because I miss the students actually. I'm thrilled when they stop by my office. Of course, they walk in, I have no idea who they are. Somebody walks in and I go, tell me your last name. And then they tell me, I'm like, well, I have 220. I didn't even know that. So. Yes, ma'am.
The same population I'll have is practicing teachers for the class I'm going to be teaching. And when you said that about having assignments due on Wednesday, it sounds delightful, but that's not necessarily a reality for people who are teaching all during the week. So I made my assignments due. I did a blended course last year, and we made it due Sunday evening, which meant I was grading all day Monday. But I don't know if I see a way around that with that particular group.
It depends a lot on your audience, But maybe you could make it Tuesday. They could work all weekend. But if they had any real questions, you were there Monday, so you didn't have to stay up all night Saturday and Sunday. They just have to get used to the rotation. It's not like that's the thing about online learning, I guess, is. It almost really doesn't matter when the due date is, because it's not like you start Monday at 8 and then the due date's Tuesday.
Right.
Start Wednesday and your due date is a week away, So I would survey them and say, what's the best due date time for you? And see what they say. Is that what they said?
No, I would say, tell me the best date that's not Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah. Well, or give them choices.
Yeah.
What would be, out of these 5 choices, what would be the best time and date for due dates? But I have worked with those who want to be teachers here, and they have done their teaching demonstrations. I teach a totally online methods course, and they have done their teaching demonstrations in Adobe Connect Professional. It's not that you don't see their body language, but you do know if they know the content, and they can make eye contact, and that has worked very well.
I know this would vary by instructor, but when you did the blended, what did you feel was the most important to do when you saw them face to face?
Reiterate anything I thought would be difficult. Anything you could do to eliminate 42 emails. In any type of just communication. Face-to-face communication is always better, in my opinion, than online communication. Because you see them go, what? What is she talking about now? You get all those nonverbal cues. And ask them if they have questions. Yes, ma'am.
What types of accommodations have students requested for online courses?
More time on testing. We have had, in I'm in the Technology Sport and Training Management program. We have had blind students, so we had to have software readers. We have had legally blind students, and we've had to blow up, documents or send them documents that they preferred to see on paper instead of the screen. Guess those are the three main ones. More time on tests seems to be when you get the disability, sheet, or you get the sheet from the Office of Disabilities, and that's been the main one. And so what you have to do is this is what I do, is I make two sets, the same test, but you put it in two places on Blackboard. And one might have a the one typically that for the people who need longer time, I email them a password, because I don't want everybody getting in there and having twice as much time. Because when I do the online tests and quizzes, I pretty much do 30 seconds a question, true, false, multiple choice, 30 seconds, okay? So, because they either know it or they don't. But then if I have to double that for someone else, then I give them a password to get in. I personally email them and say, I've set up a special test just for you, because you're great, and here's the password. And then I send it to the 5 in the class.
Can I ask Karen, what is she hearing from the students with disabilities? What are the things that we're using in even face-to-face classes, technology-wise, that they're struggling with?
We haven't had a lot of students, at least they haven't come to us and said, I've got this online class. So I don't know, that's why I was asking, because from our conversations, they tend to be shying away from the online classes unless no alternative. But I would, extra time and test is probably the biggest thing in our office that we do in face-to-face classes, so that doesn't surprise me.
Does anybody else had to do any type of altering of online content for ADA regulations? Do you have a question?
Do you set all this up in Blackboard?
I do.
And always, that's what you use to
Yep.
teach? Okay.
I'm a Blackboard groupie. I was a Web CT groupie before I came here, so I've always, it's just a central point, and sometimes students need help on using Blackboard. The first time I taught an online class here, I put a how to use Blackboard tutorial in Blackboard. And I went, well, that was stupid. Yeah. I don't even know how to get in Blackboard, and that's where the tutorial is, So, but some of them do need help, in Blackboard. But anything you can do proactive, put a little tutorial out there on how to use Blackboard. Email them all. I email them all a week before the class starts and says, everything's out there. Please use this week to familiarize yourself with the environment. If you don't know how to do something, let me know immediately, not 5 weeks into the course when you go, I never knew how to, submit an assignment. Yes?
One of the things that Tina and Susan helped me with is creating little, simple Jing videos. And Jing is free, and you just do a little narrated video right there on Blackboard. And it has helped immensely with explaining, for example, how to get around in Blackboard.
Right.
It's such a cool...
Jing is at www.jingproject.com. It's a screen capture, so it captures whatever's on your screen and your voice. So you can make little mini tutorials. And I've even done that with the syllabus. You have to watch the syllabus because they don't read it necessarily. So I'm going to highlight, it's like syllabus highlights. So here's the highlights, and then you watch, here's the big project, don't forget that. Everything's due Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Da-da-da, and you do a 5-minute overview of the syllabus.
Jing?
Jing, J-I-N-G.
See, I do that at the beginning of, one course I have weeks, the other course I have modules. But again, it's the little Jing video at the beginning of the module that runs through and kind of says, don't forget this, and you go.
A lot of reminding online.
It's very sweet.
All right. I think we are pretty much right out of time. Thank you all again, and please fill out the evaluations.